Is your dog about to die? Well, you're in luck, because here at Spotify, we've created a dog dying playlist courtesy of Valerie's veterinary practice. Who let the dogs die? Woof.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Titles Mean Nothing. I'm Alex Thomas.
And I'm Sasha Swift.
Kicking us off, we're going to have a Tattoos 101 sort of lesson.
And for anyone who knows me, that this is my area of expertise, not Alex's whatsoever.
Not at all. So, the sort of outline, I feel like I'm starting an essay, but the outline, this is very much going to be introduction to kind of a situation, because tattooing, tattoo artistry has deep history in lots of different countries. I don't know the whole wealth and breadth. You know, there are full academic papers on it. There are books, people much more knowledgeable than me, but it's something that interests me. And I figured we'd look at the history, the origins, the different styles, and talk about kind of hot topics in tattooing at the minute, and my personal relationship with it, and potentially Sasha's future relationship with the tattoo world.
I don't have any tattoos, and I know nothing about tattoos.
But you're considering getting a tattoo.
How many tattoos have you got?
Well, hold up. We're going to play a game.
We're not going to play how many tattoos have you got and what are they all, because I always forget.
Well, exactly. So, before we get into it, I thought we'd play the game that we sometimes play with one another, and it is Guess Alex's Tattoos.
Or I thought you were going to say Animal Crossing.
We do play a significant amount of Animal Crossing as well. So, the first time we did this, I think you probably got 4 or 5 out of, I think it's like 8 or 9 I've got a list, so I remember, because I forget too. And then I think the most recent time, you only missed 1 out, so there's definitely been an improvement. For transparency, I'm wearing a t-shirt and shorts, but behind a microphone, behind a microphone and a laptop, so I'm partially covered, partially not.
Okay, you've got your bee.
Yep.
You've got your moon.
Yep.
You've got your tiger.
Yep.
You got your cheetah. Leopard, you know, the thing, the cat, the big cat with the teeth.
Which big cat with the teeth?
Well, I've said the tiger, so...
Oh, okay, so the other one. Yeah. That's a leopard, yeah.
So I got it right.
Yeah. You said cheetah. You said cheetah first.
Oh, okay. Then you've got your grim. You got your little dove.
Mm.
You got Bambi.
Yeah.
You got Thumper.
Mm-hmm.
You got the heart.
Yeah.
And the hands. You got the roses. Shoulder.
Nope.
No, the ones on your shoulder, they're not roses. What are they? Flowers.
They're peonies.
Yeah, flowers.
Yeah, flowers.
And what am I missing? Oh.
There's 3 still to go.
How have I got 3 left to go? You got your succulent.
Yes.
Shit.
There's the one you always forget. And another one.
What's the one I always forget?
It's the pumpkin.
Oh, yeah, I said that. Pumpkin.
Sasha always forgets about the one that she was sat beside me while I got.
It was out of season.
It was out of season. Pumpkin tattoo I got on December 23rd last year.
What else have I forgotten?
It's my crystals and fern, which for reference is on my outer forearm.
I can basically nearly see it.
A very visible place.
I was trying not to cheat.
So, to summarise, because I think you've got it now. Bambi with roses, Thumper with roses, a crescent moon, peonies, the bee, the Grim from Harry Potter, my tiger, the pumpkin, crystals and fern, leopard, the shaking hands in the heart, and the cacti and succulents. So, a number of these tattoos are influenced by traditions from a few different places. And that's something that we can sort of touch on a little bit later, talking about the different styles. I'm going to be making references to needles, blood, injuries to the body, because that is what the process of tattooing involves. So if these are going to be uncomfortable or triggering topics, this episode might not be the one for you.
Does this mean I don't have to?
You can step out and I'll just talk. So the word tattoo is believed to have originated from a Polynesian word called tatau. So traditional Polynesian tattoos, they use a comb called an au, so the au part of tatau, which was tapped in with a mallet called a sosau, kind of spelt like sausage without the GE, to push ink into the skin.
That sounds very painful.
It's not that bad, apparently. I think when I was doing my sort of reading behind sort of the more traditional approaches to tattooing, the thing that got me thinking was actually the aftercare and the healing of the tattoo. Nowadays, there's very much like a clinical approach, and you washing it regularly, using balms on it, that sort of thing. I may be wrong here, but the impression I've got in terms of the tattoos that were done thousands of years ago, they're ritualistic a lot of the time, religious, that sort of thing. But people didn't have as much an understanding of bacteria, how viruses spread, that sort of thing. So may well have just carried on with their normal lives.
Yeah, these days, everyone has an idea of how viruses spread.
A chronic awareness
yeah.
of how viruses spread. So for me, I think probably the process of tattooing back in the day wasn't necessarily that bad, but you may well have seen a lot more people with infections and that kind of thing. Tattooing's been practiced throughout the world from at least as early as 3250 BC. The reason we know this is because mummies of about this age, they've used carbon dating to see how old they were, have been found with tattoos created from soot. A fire would have been burnt, the soot collected, and then the process is there would be cuts or incisions into the skin, and then the soot is rubbed in, and then the skin heals over where the soot's been.
That's horrible.
And the black would show through.
Oh, God. Yeah, I'm not having that.
That's fair enough. To each their own.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd go for that method either. So that particular mummy, it was found embedded into glacial ice in the Alps, and it had 61 of these soot tattoos, so pretty intensive. This person most likely was involved in some sort of ritual practice, religious practice. There are also theories, because of the locations on the body that a lot of the tattoos would be found, is that there was some sort of link to like the medical practices. Because it would a lot of the time be the same sort of areas as acupuncture spots. So rather than, being stabbed with a needle once, you're having that whole area covered, and then the soot in the injury.
A few stars maybe, or generic tribal symbols.
It's interesting you say that.
Yeah.
The traditional sort of tattoos have very much entered like popular culture within the West the last couple of decades, and now when you see people with them, you kind of think, do you know what that means? Do you know what the background is? Not to be too snobby about it, but you tend to find it's like cis-het white guys of a particular age that have those tattoos. So ancient tattooing was most widely practiced among the people of Southeast Asia, Taiwan, Oceania and Madagascar, as well as the sort of soot tattoo technique where there were cuts made into the skin. There was also a skin puncturing technique, so usually it would again be a small mallet and then something to pierce the skin. So most commonly it would be thorns, fishbone, obsidian or oyster shells. Similar practices have also been found to have taken place in ancient Japan, North Africa, the Americas, and in ancient age Britain, so the Iron Age in particular, where you've got the metal implements to be able to do it. This sort of technique and similar techniques, like hand tap tattoos, are still practiced today, like we've touched on, in some areas. A good example of this is on the island of Hawaii. Again, these more traditional practices and how they are implemented and have sort of evolved to today's practice have been covered by documentaries and videos, and it can be a really spiritual thing for some people who undergo them, almost akin to going on
pilgrimage.
A pilgrimage.
Yeah.
In Hawaii, people are trusting their skin to a tattoo master who uses ancient designs and techniques to tell stories of ancestry and personal history. Nunes is world-renowned for his work as a tattoo master. Before training a number of apprentices, he was the only tattoo artist left on the island still practicing hand tapping.
Gracie. Gracie. She likes shoes. I won't go out to the forest and or to the beach and sit down and meditate and get a design and things of that nature. But rather I talk to my ancestors and my teachers who have left. They come to me and they guide me. It's, I don't want people to look at me as like a spiritual tattooist or whatever, because it's not about that. It's about doing the work.
As Nunes prepares to work, he is surrounded by apprentices and former clients.
The design process is all him. The person has no input on what designs go on. It's all about trust. And you trust in the kahuna, the master, to know the designs that are supposed to be on you, to ho'omana you, or to give you power or things that you're lacking.
Traditional Hawaiian tattoos are hand-tapped, applied with the cadence of a heartbeat rather than the buzz of an electric machine. The oldest tattooing tools yet found in Hawaii date to about 1100 AD, which is about the same time that people first arrived in the Hawaiian Islands, so presumably they brought tattooing technology with them. If you were more heavily marked than your foe in the field of battle, I'm sure that you had a psychological advantage over your enemy, because these tattoos could be read more or less like a visual language, and you could tell a lot about that person's exploits.
I think it's really interesting the way they are tapping the tattoos, and rather than using like traditional needles and stuff. One of the things I do wonder is what's the deal with the ink? What ink do they use? Because ink changes, doesn't it? Surely.
I think nowadays it is sort of the sort of clinical grade stuff that you would get in any other tattoo studio. Hawaii is an American state, and I think they are regulated in terms of what they can use now. So historically, I think it's perhaps come from animal sources, that sort of thing. In the clip, they had surgical gloves on. The artist was leaning on like a cushion of sorts, and that was wrapped up. So it's done in a very professional, almost clinical way still.
So they're saying it's traditional, but it can't be truly traditional.
The traditional method, the traditional style and thought process, but of course there's the adaptation to sort of modern expectations of what being tattooed is like.
There's a big gap in terms of time frame there as well, isn't there? From the Egyptian to say, what was that, 1100?
Yeah, it was around 1100 in terms of when tattooing first came to Hawaii.
Right.
It's been a part of a lot of different cultures for years. Where it is most popular, we do tend to see it in Asia. So where people have moved over from Asia to the Hawaiian Islands, I think that's when it's reached Hawaii, and that's where it's developed from the use of obsidian, seashells, etc. into that hand tapping technique. With machine tattooing, usually takes me about 15-20 minutes for that irritating mosquito sound to become more of a white noise background sound, whereas I think that tapping sort of sound is rhythmic, it's soothing, and I think as well it's a bit more organic, which I think is maybe part of the attraction. I mean, we saw in the clip the person that went over there was white, so there might be an argument there around cultural appropriation, but she seemed to be quite keyed into the historical significance and heritage behind it.
It's the people of that culture who are doing the tattooing.
Yeah.
So I guess they don't seem to have much of an issue with it. It's interesting how he said it was also personalised. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you can't really appropriate something that's personalised to you, can you? That's in a way. And obviously, you know, he considers himself to be consulting with his ancestors.
Yeah.
His dead ancestors. So they presumably approve if they exist. Sorry.
No, I know what you mean. I think it's, on the face of it, you'd be like, oh, it's a white lady getting tattooed. That looks a bit dodgy. But it is a bit more nuanced than that. It's not as though she is approaching people who are native to the islands and saying, oh, I like what you've got on your leg, I want that.
Which a lot of people do, right? People do that.
It's
now.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily know about within Hawaii, but in terms of like in the UK and how tattoo studios work here, a lot of the time it is people coming in, they've seen something on Pinterest, say, or on telly.
Or bad Latin that doesn't translate properly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They'll see something and say, I want that. Now, normally, a good artist will say, okay, I like that idea, let's have a consultation, and they'll work together so that the core theme or idea is there, but it's still the artist's work rather than just ripping something off.
Yeah.
Some artists will just rip them off because it's like, well, here's an easy 100, 200, 300 quid.
And people want things that they know, don't they? And things they're familiar with. Designs that they appreciate well before getting the tattoo, or they should. I mean, that's my approach because I'm, you know, I'm not a tattoo fiend, and yet
Fiend.
you expect that I will be.
So in terms of our trip through the world of tattooing, to move on from the sort of the roots, the origins, how that side of things has developed, to fast forward slightly to the tattoo practices that are similar to the experience that most people, say in the UK, in Europe and America have. The first documented professional tattoo artist in Britain was someone called Sutherland MacDonald. He operated out of a salon in London beginning in 1894. So a salon back in the day wasn't like a hair salon. It was a pub, coffee shop sort of environment. So in the salon, it'd be sort of academics, hoity-toity people, normally, who would gather and talk about high ideas. I'm thinking suddenly of Dr. Crane at the coffee shop. So because with the timing, 1894, the move towards this idea of professional tattooing and the methods used, tattoo machines, it was really propelled by the Industrial Revolution and changes in technology. At this time in the UK, before this sort of professionalisation, tattooing was still largely associated with sailors, the working class and criminals. But by the 1870s, it was becoming more fashionable among members of the upper classes, including royalty.
So who was doing them if they weren't professionals?
Other sailors, or the working class people. So,
but what would they have used? What?
Anything they could get their hands on. So it would be a similar sort of technique to the traditional works. So you would have a sharp implement like a needle, ink of some description, or soot.
So we could make tattoos out of sort of stuff we shouldn't really. Like, we could do it now. Like, we're not going to.
People do it now. It's called stick and poke.
So we could... I mean, I'm not going to talk about on this podcast cutting myself with a knife. But that would create the wounds, right?
Yes.
And then you ink the wounds.
Yeah, I mean, the approach people take nowadays...
Heal, yeah?
And this is not something I would advocate at all.
No, of course.
If you're really desperate to find out about it, people do talk about how to do it online. But it's something I knew of friends doing as a teenager was this stick and poke technique, where you would have a needle or another sharp implement, disinfect that, vodka, whatever it is.
That's a good start, to be fair.
And then use a sort of ink and stab yourself with it in a pattern that you want. And they don't normally last long. They normally look like shit, but that is the basic principle of how to get a tattoo. Even
though you might be disinfecting the needle, the ink itself could be an infectant.
Yeah, I mean, particularly in the 1800s, who knows what your source is.
Yeah.
Putting a wound in yourself when you don't need to is a risk. You're opening yourself up to the risk of infection unnecessarily. Normally, particularly when you do see this nowadays, it will be someone in a grubby teenage bedroom, which does not at all meet the standards you would see in a good tattoo studio.
Yeah, no, not at all.
So, I feel like I've got like tense about it just because it's something that gets my back up.
It's harm, isn't it? It is self-harm in a...
Really, yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting. So I've learned something there.
That's pretty much what they were doing back in the day, before tattoo machines in the West.
These sailors were doing...
Sailors would do similar things, and...
sailors doing things to other sailors, that's not unheard of.
Not unheard of.
No.
And similarly, within prison, people would make weapons to attack one another with, but they would also furnish sharp things to give one another tattoos, or to tattoo yourself. Again, it's not going to be a sterile environment. It's not going to be sterile things being used. So they'd usually come out looking kind of gross and janky because you might have scarred yourself, you might have got an infection.
Would that have given like a cultural message though at all? Because
yeah, it's definitely a cultural thing within prisons. That's what a lot of it was. I mean, in the clip about the Hawaiian tattoos, it is a symbol of strength and power. While the tattoo community has been very male-led and very misogynistic environment, unfortunately there is still a lot of that, but it is one of those things that's getting better over time. So again, prison, sailors, armed forces, it was very much about like power, status, look what I can do and what I can what level of pain and risk of infection, etc. I can put up with because I'm so hard, I'm such a big man. That kind of mentality.
Yeah. And that's why you're getting them.
And that's why I have so many, because I need to prove how masculine I am. Around the 1870s, it was starting to become fashionable among the upper class people and even royalty to start getting tattoos. Because of that being the case, it drove the prices up where it was in a professional environment. And this association with, riff-raff people is something that does still continue in some form today. I probably do hold some snobby views around different styles of tattoos, that kind of thing.
Even though the prices went up and it was the upper class getting them, you said?
So it was becoming more fashionable. But there are still associations today.
Yeah.
For example, I work in a professional setting, and there is an expectation that, particularly if I'm meeting with a client or something, I'll cover them up. Day to day, it's not so bad.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of.
What if it was a tattoo studio that was your client? Probably
wouldn't
be different.
Be an issue.
Like, hey, look, I'm in with you guys. I get it.
It would probably be a positive in those settings.
Yeah. Just get your tats out. Get your tats out.
Get your tats out. But anyway, the idea of tattoos meaning that you are lesser than in some way, again, is something that's improving with time. Pulled out a couple of recent studies about people's perceptions of tattoos, the tattoo population, just to get a sense of where we are nowadays. So September 2006, which I say is recent, it's a bit scary to think it was 15 years ago. A research centre conducted a telephone survey which found that 36% of Americans between the ages of 18 to 25 had tattoos. 40% of people who were between the ages of 26 and 40 had tattoos, which I feel is a significant amount of people. And then 10% of people who were 41 to 64 had a tattoo. So it tended to be something that you'd, maybe get one in your mid-20s to mid-30s, typically. Conclusions have also been drawn from similar sort of research that Generation X and Millennials are the most likely generations to get tattoos, and that the thinking behind it for the people in the study was that it was a form of self-expression through their appearance.
Yeah.
Which is pretty standard.
Gen Zers, it's probably a little too early for them to be getting tattoos. I do know one Gen Zer with a tattoo.
That's the thing. Those are the people who are 17, 18, 19 now.
Yeah.
So they're just on the cusp of being able to if they want to. From talking about the history of tattooing, I've talked about the two main techniques for tattooing. So I just wanted to go into touch more detail on each of those. So first of all is the hand-poked tattoo. There's a few different terms. So we had like hand tapping with the Hawaiian practice, stick and poke with that unsanitary teenager method.
Teenagers are fucking idiots.
So to sort of summarise it and touch on what we've discussed already, this form of tattooing is where an artist pushes ink into the skin without the use of any sort of electric machine. This is a technique that most closely resembles the ancient methods before electricity was invented. And we also see
Discovered. Electricity was discovered. Sorry.
That's a very good point. Do you know what? I'll be honest. That's
my contribution. I'm out.
It's absolutely valid. I'll be honest. That sentence I copied and pasted, and for some reason I didn't pick it up. Whoever wrote it is silly. Anyway, similarly, we have hand tapping techniques, and we see that largely in Hawaii and also within the Japanese tattooing cultures. Something I didn't realise before doing the research for the podcast was that the hand poked technique is the general consensus is that it's less painful for the client, but the pain that you experience and the fact that you're in one set position for a prolonged period of time is longer. So it's less intense, but you're feeling what you're feeling for a longer period of time.
And is there more risk involved or anything?
I wouldn't necessarily say so nowadays.
Yeah.
Because the tools you're using, as long as you're going somewhere that's reputable, the tools that are used and the aftercare, as long as those things are taken care of and they're done in a proper way, there shouldn't be any additional risk.
Is there anywhere in the UK that you would know that does like hand tapping?
I don't know of anywhere that does the hand tapping technique, but I do know a lot of a few places that do the hand poked technique.
What's the difference between tapping and poking?
So the poking is the instrument is going straight in the skin.
Yeah, I felt like I just answered the question, but carry on.
Whereas the tapping is the sharp implement is attached to something, like in the clip we saw, it was on that sort of long stick, and then it's usually sort of balanced against the person's arm or leg to keep it steady,
right, okay.
And it's a like that, rather than, these are my sound effects, indirectly into the skin rather than using the additional tool. So yeah, recently I've seen sort of that there's been a bit of a resurgence with hand poke tattoos in tattoo studios that have been all or predominantly machine based workers, and I think perhaps the pain factor plays a role in it. So we're saying about it's become less of a social stigma to be tattooed, but people don't necessarily want to have to endure the pain that machine tattooing can sometimes involve. So it can be a nice way for someone to maybe get, an important word on them or an important symbol on them without having hours and hours on a table with someone like drilling into your leg, for example. Machine tattooing came about really, like I say, as a result of the Industrial Revolution. The predecessor of the tattoo machine was a form of electric pen invented by Thomas Edison. It was originally intended to be used as a form of duplicating device, so transferring one design to another using the ink. But in 1891, someone called Samuel O'Reilly discovered that the machine could be modified and used to introduce ink into the skin.
So the first electric tattoo pen was derived from the first photocopier. Is that what I'm hearing?
Essentially, yeah. And Sam O'Reilly then patented a tube and needle system.
O'Reilly?
To provide... And that tube system meant that you would have an ink reservoir within the machine itself. So rather than dipping it into, say, a pot of ink.
Well, yeah, I suppose then the best comparison there would be like pens, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Like,
it was a form of electrical pen that it developed from.
Dip a pen or a nib into a pot of ink, and then they invented the ballpoint.
Yeah. So O'Reilly's machine is based on the technology from Edison's device. It's been developed and worked on since then, and now it uses electromagnets. It was developed through time to become more efficient, and so that the person using it would have more control in terms of the depth of the needle, the speed at which the needles were entering the skin, the force of application, and that's allowed for tattooing to become a more precise art form. So we're going less from the scratchy black and white sort of designs to now you can get very illustrative work that, you know, looks like it could be in a
intricate
museum.
stuff, yeah. How would you put a tattoo in a museum though? Would you take someone's deceased arm and...
Well, it's interesting you say that. I think it's in Glasgow. There is a museum of medicine, or medicine and science, something like that. And they do have the skin, I think it's like the back, of someone who's very heavily tattooed in the 20s.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was like a, you know, from like a travelling circus act, that kind of thing. Because tattooed people were seen as part of that kind of community. It was
you could have done well, couldn't you? Really?
I could have done very well. Grown a beard. I'd have been well on way.
I could have been a bearded lady.
You could have.
Trans woman.
So like we say, over time it's become more precise. You're able to be more illustrative with the work. So that is our sort of brief overview in terms of history.
Mm-hmm.
And then wanted to talk about the main different styles of tattooing. As with anything, there are trends within tattooing, but there are certain styles, certain imagery that have stuck around for a very long time. So now is the time to go to the PowerPoint I have shared with you. As we've touched on, I enjoy tattoos. I read about them, look at them a lot, whereas Sash is very much a rookie or a noob in the area.
No, I look at them a lot. I have to. They're on you. So.
That's very true.
Yeah, so actually maybe I spend more time looking at tattoos than you do. Deep.
But to help with the engagement, because tattoos are a very visual medium and we are on a podcast, I thought we'd add an interactive element for Sash, but also for the audience.
That's very kind of you, yeah.
And I put together some images. So Sash is going to, when I prompt her, describe what she's seeing in terms of imagery.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you've kind of described what you're looking at in the different tattoos, you're going to have a guess at what style or category of tattoo that might be.
Okay.
So if we go into the next one.
Okay, so we've got... What is that? Is that a bird? A birdo? Not birdo. But a bird and a snake on one arm. That's interesting. The second one looks like two birds. I think they're birds or weird sea creatures. A sun maybe and some flowers. The next one has a nudie lady. It's tasteful with a flower in her hair. She's got bangs and
she's also a mermaid. I feel like that's a significant part.
Oh yeah, she's got. I was looking at her upper half. See, I didn't know that was her tail. That looks like a snake's head. The way that like the tail connects with her torso isn't evident to me. It looks like it's a snake like eating her out or something.
Oh God! I can now. I'm really looking at it. I can kind of see, but
and she's got a bit. Well, her tail looks like an arrow. Looks like.
That's because she's sitting on an anchor.
What the fuck? That's not her tail. Okay, this
so
was just a very confusing visual image.
Some of it's her tail,
for
some
me.
of it's an anchor. Let's move on to the next.
It's a bit of an overwhelming visual image, in my opinion.
Okay.
The next one is a heart with some birds and flowers, and it says "Mum" on it. There's not much more to say about that.
That's...
They're all in colour, by the way. All of these, yeah. The next one is a rose. Looks like a Tudor rose. With what looks like a heart motif in the middle of the rose, as if the rose has grown a heart, not a human heart, like a love heart. With some grass and leaves and shit. And the next one along looks like a butterfly or a moth or a colourful moth. It looks like it's about to pollinate some flowers, even though I don't think moths and butterflies... Do they?
I don't think so, no. Any sort of stab in the dark as to what category or style of tattoo these all are?
Sort of generic. No. They're your basic bitch tattoos.
You feel these are basic bitch tattoos?
don't
That's
know.
interesting.
No, I mean-
no, I'm genuinely interested.
No, I'm being a bit sarcastic, to be
Is that
honest.
'cause they're quite common,
I'm
you'd say?
clueless, but I'm clueless. Yeah, they're very common. I mean, the idea of a mermaid, a heart, some flowers, and a nice animal or the sun or a snake. I feel like I've seen those a million times before.
Would you say any of my tattoos look anything like any of those?
I don't know because I can't see them.
I'll stand up. Chair scraping.
Oh god, Alex is standing up away from the mic. I think the only one that looks remarkably similar is the heart with the hands on it, which looks a bit like Bart Simpson's tattoo that he was getting of his mother that just said moth, but without the moth on it.
Yeah.
Which me and Alex have discussed about turning into that tattoo.
We've written it on with pen before.
Yeah, marker pen. We didn't tap it ourselves in or anything.
No.
Yeah, I think that's the only one I could say definitely looks like yours. Because
I think that's
it's not a singular image, is it? It's like a montage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a Photoshop.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's
gonna-
photoshopped a. Yeah.
I'm just going to tuck my chair back in. Okay, so yeah, these are definitely common.
Are these traditional?
Look at you. Yes. So if you click to your next slide, you get the answer.
American traditional.
American traditional.
What's that? America as in the Americas or the United States of
As
America?
in United States, America.
The States, they're called the United States of America and they just think they are America, but they're not.
So the key things that stand out about this sort of style, if you were on the lookout for it or you saw a collection like that together, you get bold lines, bright colours, and common or traditional symbols. So like the roses, the anchors, pin-ups, and the love heart tattoo as well. Like you say with mine, it's quite very traditional love heart tattoo. The blue leopard as well, I didn't feature any animals on that slide actually, but animals like lions and leopards,
A
big
mermaid's
cats.
an animal, isn't it?
Yeah, in a roundabout way. Those are also pretty traditional with American traditional. Again, that kind of tends to tie in with the sort of themes around like strength, power, etc., which is why they kind of sit with the
Hamburgers.
with the American traditional
Has anyone got the
tattoos.
McDonald's logo? I feel like that would be more like American traditional than anything.
I'm sure there are plenty of people with McDonald's tattoos. Something for us to
Sad,
look up.
isn't it?
Yeah, pretty.
Yeah,
Although to
sad.
be fair, I've seen a few good.
I'm not loving it.
I've seen a few good pizzas, burgers, chips as tattoos. I wouldn't want that branded on me, the McDonald's
You'd
brand
want
or
broccoli.
logo. I'd love a broccoli tattoo.
Yeah.
I've seen some really cute broccoli tattoos actually. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't want McDonald's brand on me, particularly as a vegan. It'd be a bit problematic. So yes, those are sort of the key symbols, key things that tend to stand out. This is something that I personally have come more and more into over the last few years, and that's why it's been a couple of my more recent tattoos that are influenced by or sort of fit within that
Because you
category.
look less basic because of your existing tattoos.
It's a balance. I wouldn't call these basic personally.
That's
There is
the only word I can think of because I'm not familiar
Yeah.
with. Yeah.
something in terms of this sort of American traditional style that I also wanted to touch on. There are a couple of content creators, YouTubers, whatever you want to call them, that I watch who do tattoo specific content. That's basically all I watch on YouTube now. A creator called Quickened, she mentioned how she felt that there's been recently a move back towards the idea of flash tattoos. So that's the idea of there's pre-drawn designs on sheets or on Instagram pages and people pick out the designs they like, whereas in the early noughties and I'd say sort of 2010 to 2015 there was a real big spike in the idea of custom tattoos. So you said before about people coming in with something they want. A lot of the time with that, they'd come in with a drawing and they'd maybe say, I want this, but I also want some roses on it for my grandma, and I want oranges on it because I liked
Did you just look at your fruit bowl?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just thinking, oranges for the last holiday I had in France. And you'd end up with very unique tattoos, but sometimes god-awful tattoos if the artist perhaps isn't as skilled in terms of trying to implement those themes, which is challenging, in a way that looks cohesive or looks, maybe symmetrical in some way or just appealing to look at. Some people will just sort of blob the things together and say, look, there's your tattoo. So, if you would like to move on to the next slide, to the next set of images.
Oh, what are these? Okay, the first one is someone's face. It looks like some water has submerged part of her face.
Yeah, she looks like she's in a bath or something like that, perhaps.
The second one is that an Irish flag?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that a tattoo within a tattoo?
It is.
My God,
I feel like that's pretty cool.
I don't know who that guy is.
He's a boxer, I believe.
He's an Irish boxer. I'm not going to do an impression. And he's got a tattoo on his chest, so they've tattooed the tattoo.
Yeah.
That's tattoo inception, that is.
I love tattoos on tattoos.
The third one is... Oh, who's that guy? Oh, it looks a bit like Bryan Cranston, but with his hair shaved. And he's got a pair of glasses on, and he has a bit of a goatee. Heisenberg. I know all about him. And then the next one is the tattoo of a clock. And some roses. No, it's a stopwatch, isn't it? Yeah.
A pocket watch, yeah.
Yeah, every watch is a stopwatch if you want it to be. The next one's a tiger. No, is that a tiger
That's
or a
a
lion?
tiger, yeah.
Sorry, I can momentarily get tigers and lions and cheetahs and leopards mixed up. Yeah, it looks pretty fucked off if you ask me.
Yeah.
Like, not like I'm really pissed off, but a bit like irritated.
Mm-hmm.
The third one appears to be a beach each. And it's got like someone's obviously been playing Animal Crossing and has placed a swing on the beach.
Yeah.
But the supports for the swing are nowhere to be seen, I've got to say.
I'm going to guess that they're above the person's elbow, but who knows?
Well, I would. Do you want me to guess?
Yeah, guess the style.
Well, I would say they're, the top three at least are popular culture because you get an Irish boxer, a woman's face in the water, probably a woman I don't know, but. And Mr. Heisenberg. And the bottom three, I don't know really, because they seem unrelated to me.
Okay, do you want to go to the next slide to see what the style is?
It's realism / realistic.
Yep. So, classic realism has been part of fine art, so museum-esque art, for a long time. However, it's only been really in the latter half of the 15th century that we've seen realism within tattooing. And again, that's because of the development in the technology. So people have been able to do shading a lot better, that sort of thing. Now, portraiture and realism is usually the area where you see the most fuck-ups. I can't remember if we swear on this or not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fuck yes.
Fuck yes. This is the area you see done badly because it is so difficult.
Fucking difficult, yeah.
You compare the use of colour and shading in those images, particularly like portraits, to the traditional work. Not that traditional is like quote easy, but realism, like
it's fucking hard.
It looks really bloody hard.
Yeah, bloody. And you can get bloody.
Very, particularly if it's on a muscly area.
We do swear on this podcast.
So it's something that has become more common, become more refined, and like particularly looking at those top three, when I saw them, I was like, shit, these are really impressive. That water one, it looks like it could be a pop star or model or something. I don't know who she is, but I love the colours in it, the purples and that.
I feel like I couldn't do that, like on myself. I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's because I work with video and squares or rectangles all the time. But the idea of me having a canvas which isn't like, it's like the boundaries are your arm, which is like, that's not a square. I feel like every design you should be able to draw a rectangle around. That is so...
That's interesting. I mean, I sort of see where you're coming from. Yeah. I admire the work in those, but I wouldn't get a realism tattoo myself. I think the other factor for me with that is they look great on the person when they're done, when they're fresh. The human body changes over time. You get bigger, you get smaller. Some people have babies, some people's breasts get bigger, blah, 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 blah. As those things change and develop, the tattoo shape and size changes. So I tend to stick with more, let's say, graphic or things with a bold outline, because generally speaking, as some of my tattoos are about 15 years old now, that's not right.
Yeah,
that's really not right.
Were you
7 or
10?
8. No, some of my tattoos are about 7 or 8 years old.
That's remarkably different.
I was feeling like I was 28 for some reason. I got my first tattoo when I was 18, so I was like, yeah, 10 years. My body's changed in that time. All my tattoos still look decent. I feel like if my first tattoo or a couple of tattoos had been portraits or something, they'd probably look a bit messed up by now.
Yeah, like did you use the skew tool?
Yeah, I've not got a fantastic amount to say that. It's very popular. Always does well, online because it's fresh and new. They do tend to sort of fade, warp, etc. over time. In terms of technique, one of the benefits that styles like the American traditional has, and I don't know how the science of it works, but having a bold black outline on a design helps hold the rest of the colour within, the confines of where it's supposed to be. If something's not got a set outline, you tend to see it sort of blurring into the skin, the colours fade quicker, that kind of thing. So realism does suffer a bit from that, but there's always the option of touch-ups if someone wants that. If you go to your next slide, we will see the next style.
Ooh, some watercolour-esque flowers. What are they?
I think they're sort of poppies or something like that.
Okay.
It's not 100% clear what kind of flower it is.
Some writing on watercolour that says, I would say these are all watercolour-esque.
You're on the money, but it might be nice to have a brief visual description of them.
The second one say, a moment of pain
I couldn't read the
worth
writing.
a lifetime of glory. The next one is some doggo paws. Are they cute? I want that.
They are cute.
Can I have that?
You could have that with Maisie's paws.
Oh my. Okay, Maisie's my cat, by the way, listeners. I do have a cat. And the third one is some leaves and flowers and shit. The fourth one is Stitch from the movie Lilo and I forget the title. And the fifth one appears to be some sort of compassy thing
with a world map in it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a world. Sometimes I forget where we live,
Yeah.
And yeah, like I said, that's watercolour, isn't it?
Yeah, spot on. Literally, the second word out of your mouth describing it, you're like, some watercolour, and I'm like, done. You finished.
I said, is this
Complete
watercolour?
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You were spot on.
So I was right.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. I know tattoos. I'm an expert. Now so are the listeners.
This watercolour style is something that is pretty popular at the minute. It's in very high demand by the most recent generation of tattoo enthusiasts.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying about Gen Zers just coming into the world of tattoos. Typically tend to see this on a younger client. So I would maybe say sort of 18 to 28-ish. And
wow, that's good. I'm still within the boundaries of
you are,
young.
yeah, so you can get your Maisie paw prints. And it's very much, I feel like it looks quite modern. And the ones that you looked at there, they're very colourful, they're very illustrative. Essentially what it looks like is someone has washed over the skin with a paintbrush, and then you'd maybe have some more definition, so like in the outline of Stitch or the text in that second one. When they're first done, as you can see in the pictures, they look pretty, but this is another one where the idea of not having the bold outline trips them up. So the outline of Stitch or the text, that'll last you for ages, but the colours often end up looking quite muddy after a while. The colours essentially blend under your skin. So you end up with much paler colours. Sometimes, you end up with awkward browns, yellows, greens that look more like a blemish on the skin. So that is our sort of speed course through a few of the main styles of tattooing. There are a lot of other groups and traditions. So I touched before on Japanese stylings. There's also Celtic tattoos, which come from the kind of Iron Age British ancient tattoos. And also some more kind of trendy styles that you see nowadays, such as fine line tattoos. So, before finishing up, I initially wanted to just give a bit of credit to people who I've used as resources for this. I mentioned Quickened on YouTube before, and also a lady on there called Lauren, who goes by, I think her username is Treacle Tats. They are both content creators who do tattoo stuff. They are good people to go to if you wanted more of an in-depth knowledge on different styles, etc. Lauren in particular focuses on the environment in the UK, the community in the UK, and she has also recently done videos on important topics like unfortunate incidents that we've seen recently around sexual assault, sexual abuse within the tattoo community, and also racism. Again, quite a hot topic at the minute. So those are some good resources if you did want to take a deeper dive into the world of tattooing.
I certainly learned something today.
And also, if anyone has questions on it or just wants to get a conversation going, you can always send me a message on the Tattoos Mean Nothing podcast Instagram page, TMN podcast. So that's been Tattooing 101. I have been Alex Thomas.
And I'm Sasha Swift.
And this has been Titles Mean Nothing.
We don't normally say that together.
No.